Hey there, I'm Rob at NextView, and I'm delighted to be chatting with Patrick here from Theo AI. Hey Patrick, how's it going?
Good, glad to be here.
Yeah, this is not the NextView office typically. We're actually at our founder retreat, so that's why we get to be out here in the beautiful woods in Sonoma County. So hopefully it's been a good experience for you so far.
Yeah, this is my first founder retreat, so.
Awesome, hopefully the first of many.
That's right.
I'm going to ask some questions about Theo and the origins of that company, but maybe just to kick off, tell us a little bit about your background and your childhood. It's always nice to hear the origin story, like really from the beginning of where entrepreneurs come from.
Yeah, I grew up in the Central Valley of California, a place called Modesto. I think one thing that was interesting, both my dad was a bit of an entrepreneur. He was a real estate agent in San Francisco. And he saw a watermelon garden in Modesto, and not knowing anything about development, he turned it into a golf course.
Amazing.
And started that. And I had a childhood where we spent weekends working the golf course, cleaning bathrooms, picking up golf balls. So it was kind of a crash course in business.
Did you ever ask him, like, he just came up with this idea and just did it?
Just did it.
On a whim?
On a bit of a whim. I like asked him too, just now having a wife as well, like, what did my mom
What were you
think?
thinking?
Yeah, and she wasn't too happy, but obviously it all worked out.
And you had to move to do this too.
Yeah, we moved to an hour and a half south of San Francisco. We didn't have any friends there. My family didn't have any friends there. So it was a big leap of faith. But I think it's also in part a bit of like the immigrant DNA of sorts of taking big swings, taking big chances, not being fearful of being in completely foreign environments and still looking to make something work.
That's amazing.
So, but I would say from another like viewpoint of this is I grew up in that more like tiger parent environment. I was always told to get straight A's. I was a straight A student going into high school, and then when I got into high school, the college advice that my parents had gotten was like, Patrick's really great, but he's a little introverted. Like, you should get him into high school leadership. But in order to get an A in high school leadership, you had to participate.
Yeah.
And so my parents were like, oh, you should run for freshman class president.
Okay.
And so it was me versus this guy named John Key. And John was a bit of a jock. He was 6 foot, he was chiseled. And there was me, I was a little bit more nerdy, I had all my school books. But my mom went to the local library and found this book on writing high school election speeches. And so she helped me write my election speech. And she also made these backpack tags that said VIP, which stood for Vote IP. And so we'd pass those around. But then came election day, and John went up first, and he talked about how he had the most friends, he was the most qualified person to be freshman class president. And I went up and I was like, look, I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about you. Because it's my belief that if I can make you great, then together we can be the best freshman class. And later that day, I found out that I had won.
Really? That's amazing.
And it set me on this path before I even knew what the word meant, but like servant leadership, where I spent most of my high school time and college time, and even now, I would say in terms of how I run companies and startups is, I'm just trying to make all the people around me as good as they can be, and I find that a lot of great things happen when you do that.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
And was that in the book that your mom checked out in the library for you? Or
Yeah.
came up with yourself?
All the credit goes to my mom in this case. I can't take any of the credit of having that level of wisdom. I don't know, was that 16 years old?
That's amazing.
So
you had a lot of entrepreneurial experiences growing up. Can you just share like some of the early things that you did that kind of showed this spark for just like starting something and making something out of nothing?
Couple stories that come to mind. This is maybe like not an entrepreneurial experience, but one story that just comes to mind is like I was playing in a park one time, and I was flying my kite, and my kite went into a neighbor's house. And as I was tugging the kite, I accidentally cut off a section of her rose bushes. And I was so scared, I ran home, and I was trying to figure out what to do, and I didn't want to tell my parents. And I ended up going on my computer, and I printed out like this, sorry, I cut off all your roses card. I ran to the front door, and I left it. And my parents later found out that I had done this because the neighbor called. But they were like, wow, like Patrick took all this time. Like, I understand it was an accident, but like the fact that I admitted to it, I think that, we talked yesterday about intellectual honesty. I don't know if I was trying to be honest, but at least like I felt something at this young age of just wanting to tell people when I made a mistake and be upfront about that.
And that's unusual, I think, right?
Yeah.
To show both like the initiative and to like face the situation head on. As a kid, that's not natural to most
I have no
people.
clue where that came from, and I don't know. I didn't have a plan of any sort. It was just funny that my impulse was to do all these things, and it was a story that was repeated back to me. I think another experience, like I played golf growing up. I think it was my dad's aspiration for me to be Tiger Woods because I started playing golf when I was 3. And so I started.
We played golf together. You hit a long ball.
Yeah. I'm definitely not bad, but when I was competing at like 6 or 7 in these competitions, I was like second to last. Like there was definitely no future for me in terms of being a professional golfer at the age of 6. But I had no sense of what failure was or what it meant to be last. Like my dad would recall stories where like I'd finish my round of 9 or 18, and I was just so excited to eat the hot dogs at the very end. I just didn't have a concept of failure. And one thing that's been echoed back to me.
Now, is it that you didn't even understand what was happening, or you understood, you just didn't care? Like it just didn't hurt your ego at all?
It didn't hurt my ego at all. Like I don't think I just absorbed it in the same way that most people would. Like, oh man, like I didn't shoot as good as I should have, or I shouldn't have done these things. It's just not something I even had any thoughts on.
Yeah.
I was just happy to be out, happy to be playing golf with my friends. And that's all that mattered to me.
Yeah.
So
It's very genuine.
yeah.
So to take us from golf course in Modesto to your next step and some of the things that kind of shaped who you are as a leader during that period of your life before you started your first company.
Yeah, so going into high school, I think my ego was a little stroked. Like I was a high school freshman class president, sophomore class president. I ended up being ASB president my senior year. I was like, people told me like, oh, you can go into any school that you want. And it was my dream at the time to go to Stanford, so I applied early action Stanford. I got rejected. So I was like, oh no, what am I supposed to do? I applied to 20 colleges. I got rejected from 18 of them.
Wow.
I got accepted into George Washington in DC, and I got waitlisted at the University of Chicago. And so
Where fun goes to die.
Where fun goes to die. So on my way to DC for admit week, I actually stopped at U Chicago, and I was on the wait list, and I went to the admission office, and I was like, I need to get into your school. And a week later, I got in.
Oh, wow.
To U Chicago. And so got there. It was my aspiration. I had done some politics work. I worked for the Obama campaign in high school, and was a poli-sci major going into college. But when I got to college, like the definition of success, I feel like in high school is like what college you get into. And in college, everyone talks about like what job you're going to have when you graduate. And as a freshman, I was just told that the most successful people were investment bankers and consultants.
Yep.
So as a first year, I was like, okay, I want to be one of those people that works at McKinsey and Goldman Sachs and whatnot. And so I applied. But of course, as a freshman, I didn't get any of those opportunities. So again, I was confronted like, oh no, what am I supposed to do? And I was scrolling through Facebook, and I found this article about a foundation in Australia that was working in education reform. So I cold emailed the CEO, and I was like, hey, I want to come work for you. And long story short, he pays for my plane ticket from Chicago to Melbourne, Australia, pays for my apartment for the summer, and gives me a summer stipend.
Must have been a really good email.
I think it was a decently good one, yeah. But then 2 weeks into my internship, he resigns as the CEO. But he also resigns from his post at the United Nations. And he's like, Patrick, do you want to take over for me at the UN? I'm like, of course.
So what does that mean? He just worked at the UN and
he was working at the UN. So Melbourne was hosting the 63rd annual UN conference.
Okay.
And he just asked me to be basically in charge of organizing this conference and step in.
Wow.
And so I did. And like not ever stepping foot in Australia. And I was, I think at the time, like, what is that now, 19? They're like, oh, you're young, you must know something about social media. Can you open up the social media accounts to the UN? I'm like, sure. So I opened the Facebook and Twitter accounts, and during the conference...
Did you really know what you were doing, or just
no,
like,
I had
I'm
no
just
clue
going to say
whatsoever.
yes?
Yeah. And I think it's just, when opportunity comes, you just kind of do it.
Yeah.
And I did, and we got 1.2 million hits during the conference. Basically the main UN, the General Assembly was happening right afterwards.
Okay.
And so they're like, wow, we have this all-star kid from Australia. Can you come over to New York and run social media for the UN? And so I started doing that. And I was at the General Assembly. I got to meet Ban Ki-moon, who was the Secretary General at the time. And one of his initiatives was getting more college students involved. And so I started working at the UN. And then through a byproduct of that, all these not-for-profits would come up to me and saying, hey, we know we need to be in social media. Can we pay you money to consult us in social media? And so I started my first business in college called Kip Solutions, where we did social media consulting for not-for-profits. We were recognized in like Inc. magazine's coolest college startups, and it was a time where Facebook was getting started and college entrepreneurship was a big thing. And then my senior year of college, a larger agency in New York City reached out. They're like, wow, you have such an impressive roster of all these NGOs. Can we start working together? And we did, and then they later acquired the first business that I ran. So,
And so I imagine you had a little bit of a fork in the road between like, you actually spent a lot of your time in the realm of like public service, government, that sort of thing, and then you'd started this company almost by chance. Like, did you see that as a fork in the road, and how did you end up continuing down the path of building companies and then moving more towards technology?
Yeah, I think when I was in college, you're trying to figure out what to do. I think I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. I had a lot of friends that were into entrepreneurship, but a lot of founders, when they start the business, is because it's like in the social impact space, for example, some sort of sickness, some sort of tragedy usually is the motivator for why they get into the business. And I'm fortunate still where there hasn't been something so tragic that it hasn't inspired me to start something. But I think one of the nice things about this business that I started with Kip Solutions was that I could just enable other people's aspirations and dreams and try to multiply that. And so, I don't know, it just one thing kind of led to the next, and it worked out.
Got it. And so after Kip Solutions got acquired, where did you go from there?
After school, I still worked for the agency for a little bit in New York City, and then I got a job offer to go to Google. So I moved back to the Bay Area. At my time at Google, my day job was working with a lot of small and medium businesses, trying to get them onto our ad platform, which would eventually dovetail into how I started my second startup. But one other thing that just happened was when I got there, people had heard that I worked at the UN. And I met this guy named Ming, who's known as the Jolly Good Fellow at Google. And Ming was working on this
project. Why is he known as the Jolly Good Fellow? I actually don't know anything about this.
He's like employee, I'm going to butcher it because it's been a little bit of time, but he's like employee 20, I want to say, at Google. And there's this wall, actually, if you ever go to the Google office, where he takes all the pictures with the celebrities that visit campus. So he's known as the Jolly Good Fellow. But he was working on this initiative of trying to inspire 1 billion acts of service around the world. And he'd heard about my credentials. I had just arrived at Google, and he's like, Patrick, I want you on this team to work with me on this. And about a year in, the initiative had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015 and 2016. Just an incredible experience. I think you talk about like Google level of scale and credibility. Like, I got to sit in rooms with Nobel laureates, and I got to go with my dad to Monte Carlo to attend like a Nobel event, and we were in an aquarium with all these Nobels, like just not something that happens every single day. It was just, it was a nice culmination of everything that kind of added up to that moment, but also a learning experience. Like I get asked sometimes, like, what did I learn from hanging out with all these Nobels? One thing that I have observed is just like how much grief they can hold on to and still show up every single day. Like they've seen so many atrocities in whether their home country or their environments where injustices have happened, and to still get up every single morning and say, like, in face of every adversity, I still want to get up and fight or try to make the world better, which was deeply inspiring to me. But then going back into maybe something less exciting, but how it started my second business was being more in my day job of working with small and medium businesses. I would talk to a lot of them. And obviously our goal at Google was to get them to run ads, but a lot of them didn't have any photos of their products. And at the time at Google, we would just send them to this website where they would reach out to, they were supposed to reach out to agencies to get photos. I would check back in 2 to 3 weeks later and they would have just never done it. They just didn't have the time. And so my boss at the time, this guy named JB, he's like, Patrick, you've started a company. Why don't you go do another one solving this problem? So he wrote me a $100K check. We ended up turning it into a 3.2 million seed round, basically trying to solve the content problem for small and medium businesses. And we got to about 1.5 million in ARR in that business.
Got it. And so, and then from that company, maybe just complete the story of that company, and then you ended up going to law school. Is that right?
That's right.
After?
Yeah. So learned a lot, obviously, in that business. We got to $1.5 million in ARR. We were trying to raise our Series A, and then COVID hit. And obviously, a lot of the businesses that we serve, they just went under. And we were at the tail end of our cash. We were trying to raise our A,
Yeah.
and we just couldn't get out of it. And so
That must have been a tough experience.
it was an extremely tough experience. Like, these last 48 hours of talking to a lot of founders, I think it was a tough experience. But going into this thing, I think one of the anxieties or fears for a lot of CEOs is this moment of, like, for example, like my parents invested in this
Right.
company. You don't want to lose your parents' money. You don't want to let all the employees and team members that you have that you've gone on this journey down. And I think a lot of the fears sometimes for founders is like, you just won't recover from that experience.
Right.
And it was really tough to obviously go through it. But one thing that I learned going through it and surviving it is like, you'll get through it, and better things are going to be on the other side.
Yeah.
And so that's given me a lot of calm now, but in the moment it was tough. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd worked at large corporations at Google. I'd worked and started my own companies. And I had...
You've kind of gone from like the mainstream path to the non-mainstream path, back to the mainstream, back to it. Like, it's kind of interesting. You kind of ping-ponged a little bit, which is interesting.
There was no life design,
Yeah.
right? It was just following one thing to the next.
Yeah.
Which has produced incredible opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of at least the joy of this journey so far. But the law school situation was, UCLA was starting this new program called the Masters in Legal Studies. It was designed for people, what they call mid-career. So the average age of student was 36.
Oh, wow.
Where you've interacted with the law. You don't want to be a lawyer, but you want more experience with contracts. You want more experience with what you can do in terms of employment law. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I've worked in startups. I've had to do contracts from all my team members and with other companies. Like, maybe as a form of decompression, like this would be something worth doing.
Yeah.
So I enrolled. And I think there's a couple things that were interesting for me. Like, one is just going back into a school environment after being out of school for nearly a decade. It was just a nice way to just spend time thinking. I feel like rarely in life do you get time to just think and not have to worry about producing things, or meeting revenue targets, or whatever it may be. And I think, like most founders, you just start to connect dots.
Yeah.
So when I was in law school, I started this business with my UCLA law professor there, Alex Albin, who teaches AI and internet law. And we were just very interested in, like, okay, how can we harness all these advancements in AI to move the legal industry forward? And that's when we got excited about legal prediction.
Yeah. So maybe for the benefit of folks listening, can you give the quick story of like what Theo does, and just chat about the product and kind of where you're at?
Yeah, on an upper level, we do legal prediction for lawsuits. So the clients that we help are law firms, litigation funders, general counsels, where right now today, if you want to get an understanding of a settlement, you're going to various law firms, you're going through tedious processes in order to figure that out. With us, you can just upload your lawsuit, and within a couple of minutes, we tell you what we think the expected outcome is. And we're fortunate, Rob, where you've led our pre-seed and seed, and we've now raised, $6.4 million in total funding.
Got it. And who are what are the types of customers that you would serve?
So we've initially focused on litigation funders. And so for laymen, I call them like venture capitalists for lawsuits, but they're generally trying to work with small and medium businesses, solo practitioners, that maybe they have a patent and Apple has used their patent without their permission. And they can't afford the attorney fees to go after an Apple. And so they go to a litigation funder. And for litigation funders, what we've observed is a lot of them just do an analysis based on the legal merits of the case. And what we do is we have a repository of settlement case data that we've created, as in we've looked at the case facts, we've hired experts to say, like, hey, based on this case, we think it's worth this. And we can give a more financial, analytical perspective on a lawsuit, so a litigation funder can decide if they actually want to invest in it or not.
So can you talk maybe a little bit about just how you came up with this idea specifically, and this starting point, and then on the other side, like, where do you think this all goes?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, actually, the original concept was to do an AI judge. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but we just felt like for a lot of folks, they already kind of know what the settlement outcome needs to be, but they just need someone to kind of spell it out so they can actually get to arbitration or settlement. But we knew in order to do that, you had to start with legal prediction. And so that's where we originally regressed to legal prediction. And we just thought that was just going to be a starting point and we'd get to the AI judge pretty quickly. What we didn't expect was when we started talking to litigation funders, this in itself was a large market and opportunity. In terms of where we want to go.
Actually, maybe let me ask a different question. Does it work?
Yes.
What gets you excited about the potential here? And then there's so let's start with that.
Well, so in the beginning we didn't know, right? So one of our first areas of business building is when we were trying to build like an MVP, we were like, where can we find settlement data? So if you are from the legal industry, you'll know that most settlement data is sealed. But there is an area, finance law, securities law, where the New York Stock Exchange actually publishes settlement data for securities law. And so for our first MVP, we're like, okay, if we have the data, can we actually predict case outcomes? And instead of going to law firms to test, we went to litigation funders and we told them, hey, give us a finance or securities case and we won't know the answer, but like give it to us and we'll tell you what we think the settlement amount was. And for the first time, they're like, oh wow, this actually works. We've now run a larger analysis. With most data, we can get about 85 to 95% accuracy in securities law.
In terms of the actual dollar amount.
In terms of the actual dollar amount. And I think in the larger macro space, to my knowledge, we're the only company that's trying to solve this particular problem of trying to figure out settlement amounts. Like most legal tech companies are contract drafting, which is a big problem, but to us it's been fascinating and interesting trying to figure out the black box of settlements.
And there are obviously a ton of legal tech companies. It's one of those verticals that LLMs and generative AI seems to be like a perfect target. So how do you think about just like the landscape of AI companies within the legal space and how you carve out your niche and how do you make that defensible?
I think on the macro side, right, I think it's a great time to be a legal tech company in terms of like there's a lot of funding in it, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of people that are curious about buying quality products in the legal space. I think for us in terms of resilience and moat, it's focusing on enduring problems. And so the way that we think about this, every company that we know of wants to know before they get into a case if it's going to be something that's worth pursuing. And generally it's really tough from a human side to be that because there's a lot of human bias. And so for us to come and approach it from a mathematical basis, I think there's infinite value and there's a lot of different use cases for us. So for example, when we talk to general counsels, one of the things that we hear is they obviously serve in many cases the CEO. And one of the things they wanted to say is instead of my law firm that I went to, here's an objective third-party report from Theo that says, hey, we should settle this case for $20,000. It's not the law firm, it's not some other human perspective. This is just what the data says. And they have found that allows them to actually do their job better because of it.
Got it. How do law firms feel about this? Like this seems like a nightmare for them because, and actually I hear this a lot of times with legal AI companies that, you're kind of flying against the interests of a law firm that's trying to, that works on a billable hour model and, to be cynical, it's like more time spent dealing with legal issues, the better for them.
Yeah, I think it's part of the reason we initially didn't start with law firms because of the billable hour model. But there is something that law firms will buy is can you raise the bar on the quality of legal work? So as you know, we started with litigation funders. We announced our pre-seed round and we started getting top law firms coming to us. Like, okay, can we take a look at this technology? Can we find a mutual use case to work on? And so one of our early clients, I won't name them, but they, for example, they have a large pharmaceutical client and that client has 20,000 lawsuits against them. And the way that it works today is the law team is just given, let's say, 60 hours to go through 20,000 lawsuits. No team, even if you're Harvey Specter, can go through 20,000 lawsuits. But with what we've created, we can sort all of them and say, hey, these are going to be the lawsuits that are going to be most damning to your client. Now, going back to it, raising the quality of work, now this law firm can focus on the most pressing legal problems for their clients, whereas before they had no idea what they should actually be doing. And so that's one of the, in terms of customer journey and discovery, that's one of the things that we found that we can do.
Got it. How do you keep pace with like the pace of change within AI, legal tech specifically, and all the evolution that's happening there?
I think there's two things that I think about, and I oscillate going back and forth with them. One is obviously just keeping a pulse on the market, what's new. Like I feel for some of the earlier legal tech companies, let's say by early I mean like 2015 to 2020, where they're in a bit of an innovator's dilemma now.
Right.
They found these large markets where they're paying well, but they're being usurped by these newer, fully AI enabled, let's say contract drafting that's now fully AI enabled, or demand letter generation. What we don't want to get is in 2 to 3 years, we build something and advancements in AI displace what we do. Like we want to be at the head of the curve. So one thing is just to focus, like look at the competitive market and figure out how you stay ahead from a technology standpoint. The other perspective to me is like go back to the basics in terms of being really close to your customers. What's the core problem that you need to solve? And just do it well. And don't worry about where the market is or what competitors are doing. As long as you're solving their core problem, ideally that's all that matters.
Can you share any customer feedback that you've heard recently that just gives gives folks a flavor of what the potential people are seeing in your product?
I think the thing that gets us excited is we started out doing legal prediction more generally, but folks have seen like, oh wow, you have built this great legal prediction. Can you build it for our firm specifically? And so, whether you're a litigation fund or a law firm or a Fortune 1000 company, a lot of folks are sitting on a lot of data that's just not doing anything for them. And we've been able to come in and structure all of that and tell them like, oh, based on the $200 million you deployed, these are the cases that made you the most money. We're going to help you find new winners. And that's gotten a lot of clients really excited. If I could put you on the spot, like what got you excited maybe about this opportunity? Again, like there's a lot of legal tech companies.
Oh yeah.
What, if I could throw it back to you a little bit. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, there are a lot of legal tech companies. There's sometimes questions that I ask myself with businesses where I say, do I want this to exist? And do I want this to exist in a really big way? And this is one of those companies where I said, I think a lot of us believe that there is a huge amount of waste as a result of lawsuits. And there's just so much friction and a lot of dollars that gets tied up in these conflicts. And I said, well, it does seem reasonable that we should have a really high degree of fidelity on the outcomes of these cases well before we have to drive them to resolution. And if that was true, shouldn't that just like fundamentally change this level of waste that we see? And and like you said, that doesn't mean that people don't have jobs anymore. It just means that they can use their capacities to do like better things, higher value things. And so that was just like super compelling to me, as opposed to other companies that were a little bit more, like I like tactical business, but it was more tactical about like help me like do this job better, or actually companies that you say actually multiplies the amount of like legal conflicts that happen, right, as opposed to shrink them. So that was something that was really, really compelling for us. And I feel like given the rapid pace of change in AI enabled businesses, I would prefer to work with companies that can really reshape industries and move us towards a future that looks hopefully like nothing like what the world looks like today, as opposed to ones that feel like just derivative to what already exists. So that's a little long-winded, but that's sort of how we thought about it.
You led our pre-seed and our seed. You got to know me and the rest of the team for the last year. Any observations on like things that you like in particular about the team and opportunity?
It goes back to some of the things that you've spoken about, which is you guys are sort of like heat-seeking missiles, and it's sort of related to you have these opportunities that you see growing up, and you're like, that's a pretty good opportunity. Let me go get it. Right. or sometimes we run into problems. We're going to face that head on and admit it and deal with it and move forward, right? And so I really appreciated the agility and the sort of fierce aggression with which you chase after things, or with which you kind of admit mistakes and move on. And so that's been really special, I think, in my experience.
Awesome. That's great.
Maybe to wrap things up, can you just talk a little bit about, you started to do this earlier, but what are some of the big lessons that you've learned through either your prior companies or maybe early in your life, more lessons from these like really unusually special people that you've had the opportunity to spend time with that maybe shapes the way that you operate today?
Maybe a couple different categories to break it into.
Yeah.
I think in terms of team building, right, going back to it, something that was reflected back to me recently, we just brought on this creative agency, and they are running some creative brainstorms. And one thing they said was like, a lot of the brainstorming conversations, the CEO kind of dominates the conversation or speaks first, and everyone just kind of doubles back onto that. And maybe just more so on my personality, I'm kind of the last to speak, and the rest of the team feels empowered to express their opinion, feels empowered to even go against me at times, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And we had investors recently in an offsite, and they said, "Oh wow, like even your most junior employees feel very senior because they feel like they can say their true opinions without fear of any sort of retribution or disdain from me or of any sort." And so I think that's been a powerful culture and team building culture that we built to date.
Where was that from? You mentioned it early on, but I want to dig. Like, did you work for a leader that operated that way, or do you admire someone in particular that has that attribute?
I think like one story that comes to mind is for my second company, we went through Techstars Los Angeles. And it's 10 companies, as you know. And I would say the 9 other CEOs were way more extroverted. And when I first got there, I was like, man, is that what's expected of me? Like, I should be the person that's constantly rah-rah and out front. And there are some people that do that really well, and kudos to them. But one thing that gave me a lot of confidence towards the back half of Techstars is almost all the CEOs would come to me when they had problems. And like, Patrick, you're the calm, level-headed person. Here's my problem, how would you solve it? And it just gave me confidence that, like, okay, my personality and leadership style, like, there was credit and people saw value in it. And now as I do work on this new company, I haven't tried to, I would say I've just tried to make the strengths of my leadership style sharper in terms of trying to lift people up, trying to give them the space to have the confidence to give their opinions. And what I found is hopefully that builds the right company culture where everyone can run at the pace that hopefully I run at to some degree. And if I do that, then again, like, I think I can build the best company, even going back to like the freshman class example.
Right.
If I make every single employee the best they can be, then this will be a phenomenal company. Like, talent isn't just concentrated with just the founders.
Can I ask something spicy though, right?
Yeah.
As a male of East Asian descent, Chinese descent, you often hear this, that like there are stereotypes about Asian male leaders, that they are quiet, introverted, they don't have the kind of out front, strong leader persona, and sometimes that hurts them. Have you felt like that has hurt you as a leader, or have you been able to evade that?
So funny enough, like, I think I describe myself as more introverted, but I think a lot of folks describe me as extroverted. And I think it's just the capacity and like how they view me. Like, usually if they're getting to know me, it's because I spoke on a panel or I did something. And so I don't think I get that criticism or feedback. And even if I did, I don't know if I would change anything at this point, right? Again, like, we've created a culture where I think the feedback is people love working with us. I would even say, like, in the sales process, for example. So we're on the verge of winning a really big contract, and I wouldn't say they shouldn't have done the buying decision based on this, but the feedback that they gave was they didn't like working with the other founders. Like, they felt like they were snake oil salespeople, and they felt like our approach of just listening to their problems, of being good thought partners with them, is the reason that they want to work with us. And so, I don't know, I've only found it to be a strength, and I've tried to double down on that now.
There was a Midas list investor many years ago when I was thinking about getting into VC, and he had this comment once to me, and he said, "Authenticity works.
Yes.
Don't lose that." And I always remember that, and I appreciate it. And so I've enjoyed this conversation. We've had a really great relationship so far that's been rewarding for us, and we're really proud to be investors in Theo. So thank you so much for having us on the journey with you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Rob.